wellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
You're listening to A Quirky Journey, the Healthy Family Podcast with your hosts Jo Whitten and Leah Follett. Welcome to A Quirky Journey. Join us as we share our family's journeys to good health. You'll find plenty of inspiration, tips and recipe ideas, as well as stories from everyday people who've struggled and overcome health problems and diet challenges in their own families. I'm Jo Whitten, author of the blog and book Quirky Cooking, and I'm here with my friend and co-host and health coach, Leah Follett. And today, Leah has a special guest she'd love to introduce, so go ahead, Leah.
Oh, I'm so excited. I've been really excited to have Jersey. Her name's Joanne Hall, and I met her in Bundaberg, and she's the most wonderful person, and I'm not going to tear up or cry anywhere during this episode. But
yes, you are.
Jersey, no, I'm not. Jersey has been my rock, and I thought it was only everyone has to have a Jersey in their life, and I wanted to share my Jersey with everybody else so they knew what they were missing out on. No, everyone needs a Jersey. So I just wanted to give her a bit of an introduction. So I won't say where she is. Do you want to say where you're from, Jers?
Yeah, I don't care.
Okay, cool. Okay, Jers is in Bundaberg. And basically today we're going to be talking about scrimming babies, doctors and opinions, and we're going to be talking about allergy testing and also having the strength to listen to your own intuition and go with your gut instinct against all else.
Yep.
But firstly, before we even go down that path, I just wanted to give a shout out to all the doctors and all the nurses and all the health practitioners. Like, what we're going on and what we're doing today is talking about everything we're saying is coming from a place of love, or initially it was from a place of fear and unknowing. But through that, we've been able to reflect, and we can see that those people in those positions were there to help us and guide us. And for Jers, it's kind of been like a path of discovery and intuition and parenthood through that. So I just wanted to say that first, that, you know, doctors are there for a reason, but sometimes you have to stray off that path in order to find your own. And that's kind of where Jersey's story comes in, and why it's important to stick true to yourself and really listen to that innate voice inside yourself. So, first, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, why not, Leah?
Let's kick it off with that baby you had. No, let's kick it off with the pregnancy, that perfect pregnancy you had. Let's start from there.
Yes, I did. I had the perfect pregnancy. After the first one I had, I'd put on 22 kilos. This second pregnancy was a dream. I only put on 10 kilos. I went to a water aerobics twice a week. I was active. There was just, you know, not a care in the world, not a drama. Then I had this baby. So after the first few days, his name was Casey, I should say. Yeah. After the first few days, he developed reflux. But I was fine with that. I didn't have a problem with that. His older sister had reflux, and she grew out of that at about 18 months old. So off I toddled off to the chemist and got myself some Mylanta, because I knew that I'd be able to use that until we had our paediatrician's appointment in a few weeks. So all was going to be good. But things didn't really settle down, and he then, within the first 2 days, developed constant diarrhoea. So rang the paediatrician's office, and they said, it's okay, don't you worry, just swap over to a lactose-free formula, we'll get him tested next week and everything should be fine. And I said, okay, so off I went in, got my lactose-free formula, come home. Yeah, but it didn't help, did it?
So were you, can I just ask a question? So were you breastfeeding before the formula, or you were already on cow's milk formula?
Yeah, so I had tried to breastfeed in. Now that's another whole story.
That's another podcast.
Okay, I know I've had trouble with breastfeeding a couple of mine, so I understand.
Yes, but some of it was yes. Look, that's something else we can go into at another time.
Okay. So it went from cow's milk.
Yes, he was. I was breastfeeding in hospital, and then we were topping him up with formula as well. And then once we got home, he was pretty well much formula fed the whole time. And then once this came up, then we just went to the lactose-free formula. Then from there. So he was then still a very unhappy baby.
Did it help the diarrhea?
No, the diarrhea just got worse.
Oh.
And the silent reflux then turned into full-on projectile vomiting.
Oh, no.
So he was never settled, never slept, and was never happy. So anyway, finally 2 weeks rolls around and we're ready to go to the paediatrician. I was so excited because I thought, oh, today all of my prayers are going to be answered. After today, everything will be good.
Oh.
So went there, got our reflux meds, got a change of formula to another formula called NeoK, and went home excited that in 2 weeks' time everything would be wonderful and off we'd go and be able to have fun with our new baby. So, that didn't happen. Things just continued to get worse. The diarrhea didn't stop. The projectile vomiting didn't stop. He screamed day and night.
He had to be held upright. You had him in a baby bjorn the whole time, and you guys were on shifts. I remember that it was your turn, I'll have a nap, my turn, I'll have a nap, like it was.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember any turns with napping.
No, I don't remember any turns, no. I had a turn. I walked in the door and I said, here, strap this on and just hold that for the next 4 hours while I have a snooze.
Oh.
Yes. But anyway, so about this time, that's when I started to turn to the internet to search for answers. So I quickly came across a group called RISA, and they're a reflux support group.
How do you spell that?
RISA.
Okay.
So they were really great for help, especially mentally, just connecting with other mums that were going through a similar situation. What support groups are usually for. Then I quickly learnt, though, that everyone else was in the same boat as me. Everyone had a screaming baby that didn't sleep, that didn't settle, and nobody was really able to help any of us. So, everyone was just going through the same cycle. So I kept seeing the paediatrician. We changed reflux meds. We added thickener to his formula at the rate of 5 times the recommended dose to try and keep it down, but it still didn't help. So he didn't improve. Like Leah said, I used to wear him strapped to me just about all day. So by now we're talking about 3 months, I suppose, and I was pretty exhausted.
I remember it
very
at that stage. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I said I bet it was very stressful.
I was just going to say, at that stage, I was living in Brisbane and I was coming home to Bundaberg to check on my dear Jersey. And I remember getting in late one night, and the next day Jersey was going to start solids. I think he was about 3 or 4 months, and they said, look, try and get some rice into him. So I remember sitting in Jersey's kitchen, and she had this kid sitting up, and she was trying to feed him rice, but she was so sleep deprived and so stressed that the rice, she just got this rice, ground rice out of a packet and just mixed it with water. She was so stressed, it didn't even register she had to do anything. It wasn't an instant fix. It was, you put it on the stove, you add water, you cook it like you would do rice, to prepare it. And this poor little kid was doing the tongue reflex and trying to, because it's like sand. And we're both like, man, why isn't he eating this? And
it is so unlike me.
It's so like the alarm bells for me are like, holy, this is really bad. If Jersey is trying to feed the kid raw ground rice, something's got to give.
Oh,
he
dear.
Was about 7 or 8 months old when we did
was he? I remember him being little. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Your story, continue.
Yeah. So I was exhausted by then, constantly sitting on, trolling the internet, like I'd have him strapped to me and I'd be standing at the computer just trolling, just trying to look, find any answers, making connections with other mums on the RISA group. And then one day, because RISA was through, it's not anymore, but it was through the Yahoo system.
Yep.
Yeah, so an ad popped up for another group that was called NeoK Kids. And I thought, oh, right, okay, so I'll go have a look at this. And I joined that group. So this is one of the biggest turning points in my life, joining that group. They just blew my mind when I first got in there and, heard what was going on. So there were some kids in there that were only drinking NeoK and on reflux meds, and at school there were some kids that could eat a couple of foods, as in I'm talking 2 or 3 foods, still on NeoK, still on reflux meds.
Wow.
At school age.
So can you explain what NeoK is? Because I don't really know.
NeoK is is it hydrolyzed formula? Is that how you say it? Wow.
Yeah, like a hydrolyzed. Like it's a pre-digested, broken down, made in a lab. Just the basic. And like amino acids, peptides, vitamins, minerals, nutrients. So nothing else. No fillers. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when children are tube fed, that's what they're tube fed.
Okay. Yes, I know what it is now. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah. So that's that's where we were headed type of thing. Yeah. If he couldn't start holding this down, then that was going to be the next step type of thing. So I got into this group, and yes, that's kind of
scared you.
And I thought, is this where I'm going? Is this where we're headed? Is this just not going to change? But slowly then I was introduced to the idea of food and chemical sensitivity, and told about multiple chemical sensitivities, which is, when kids have sensitivities to multiple chemicals all at once. So they introduced me to the idea that I needed to change the water that he was drinking and have used filtered water. Yeah. That I needed to look at changing all of my cleaning products and all of my personal care products. Yeah. And that a lot of those things were actually inducing some of his reflux. So once I started to pull those things away, he then started to settle, and the vomiting became less. That group was also the ones that told me to look at removing the thickener and things like that it could be contributing to the problem because it was made from corn and things. So it was just, opening my eyes up that some of these everyday things might actually be contributing when I thought I was doing everything that I should be doing and what everyone had told me to do. Yeah. So, yeah, that's kind of where I got to with them.
Right. Jers, I remember specifically that you and Shane had to bring little Casey down for some allergy testing at the Gold Coast. That was, can you explain that? That was to test for foods that he might be able to have, or?
No, that was to look at allergies. So that was early on. So that was probably about when he was about 6 to 8 months old. And by then, because he wasn't holding anything down, and I think we'd done the rice and the sweet potato sponge by then. And that was to check for allergies before they tried to do anything further. So it was pretty much you would go to an allergist and do that, and then you would also you'd be going to what are those doctors called that do your belly? Can't think of them. GI ones.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. Let's call them tummy doctors. Gastroenterologist.
That's it. So usually those two would go hand in hand and you would see both of those, but we couldn't get into one. And obviously we were having to travel to Brisbane to have any of this done. So, yeah, we came down. And then that's when we found out that he was allergic to egg, dairy and soy. I think that was all at that stage. So it was then come back home and then try to do more food challenges type of things. But every time we tried to do a food challenge, we just ended up with diarrhea. We ended up with big red rashes around his face, and obviously really bad nappy rash from trying any of those kind of things. So through the interaction on the NeoK Kids group, I pretty well much learned that I needed to just stop and just do NeoK only for a while and see if we could then bring his chemical load down. So I think, have you talked about the bucket theory, Lau?
I have on other podcasts, but I'd like you to. rehash it for me.
Rehash it, okay. So the bucket theory is that we all have a bucket, and that everything that we come across and everything we do or eat or smell goes into the bucket. And if we eat or smell something that's too much for the bucket's going to overflow. So pretty well much what was happening with him was his bucket was just constantly overflowing all the time. And the only way to get it back down was to just stop, mark time, and just keep him on NeoK and on nothing else for a while to try to get him to settle. So when I did that, yes, things did settle down. We got into a bit of a routine. He then started to sleep at night, but still was very reliant on the reflux meds and was still refluxy, but at least now not projectile vomiting, and was keeping the NeoK down. So that's kind of where we got to from there.
There was another round of allergy testing where you came and stayed with me, though, and I remember that being an absolute nightmare because you had started removing those chemicals from your home, but I hadn't started removing them from my home. So poor old Casey came from this, pristine environment where the water was right, and like you got the sniff test when you got to Jersey's door. If you had perfume on, you weren't allowed, you weren't permitted past that point.
But it was even like washing powder. Remember, somebody would come and it'd be like, yeah, look, I can smell your clothes.
Yeah. So it was, and then she brought this baby down, and I feel forever in Casey's debt because I think he set me off on the path I'm on now.
Yeah.
I didn't know about the chemical sensitivities, and I didn't know these problems. And looking at Jersey, she had this. I had William, who yet was not diagnosed. And then she had this baby that was screaming all the time, and like I'd get up with her and just check on her through the night. He'd still be screaming, "Can I help?" "No, just go back to bed." All that kind of stuff. And I didn't realise how chemically sensitive he was, and also how bad my environment in my house was, because I was just using the normal run-of-the-mill things that you would have in a house, and I had no idea the gravity of the situation, how much it would affect him. Wow. Granted, at the time I was working as a milliner making hats. And Jez kept trying to rein me in and sort of say, no, you can't use this and you can't use that. But I didn't even listen to any of that until Casey came down. That was my wake-up call. Like he saved her house and mine.
Yeah.
He's the miracle baby.
Yes, he's been the one to send both of us on our paths, hasn't he?
Yeah, he really has.
He's the catalyst.
He is the straw that broke the camel's back. He really was. He really was. On that trip that you did come down, Jez, would you mind sharing what it was like to go up to the hospital in Brisbane? And you and I went together. I came as your backup because Shane couldn't come down at that time. I came to give you a hand. I have a very vivid memory of what happened. But, once again, we're not demonising the health system, but it's just the protocol and things that are in place and how they deal with it as part of their their ideal, their systems, their management's in place. But would you mind telling us about your journey and what happened in that hospital?
Okay, so just before then, I had been introduced to the idea of perhaps these kids having some gut issues, which I really didn't understand. So I suppose the other thing we should explain is that I had no science experience at all, as in grade 8 I had a science teacher that I did not like. So from years 9 to 12 I did everything I could to not do science, which meant I did shorthand. So for the first time in my life I actually needed to know and understand a lot of things about the body, and I just had no basic understanding of a lot of things, and that was truly to my detriment. So I was trying to understand what they meant about this gut kind of stuff. The other thing that was coming up in the group was that some kids had gone and done what was called a biomedical intervention, and the kids that had done the biomedical intervention were off NeoK, were off reflux meds, and were eating quite a wide variety of foods and things. And I thought, well, hello, what's going on here? What is this biomedical intervention stuff? So, and then basically I learned that it was just seeing a biomed doctor, and that you were doing a GAPS type diet, and then supplements. You know, the doctor would then prescribe supplements for, you know, any nutritional deficiencies that you had, type of thing. So I thought, okay. Now, in this particular group, there was one nutritionist that a lot of the ladies on there had used and had great help with. Most of them had gone to her because nobody else had been able to help them with Casey baby type of things, you know, the screaming, the reflux, the chemical sensitivity. That seemed to be where it was different to your, like, classical autism type child, I suppose,
right,
in that they don't seem to present with reflux. But the two things were really closely related, I guess. So I learnt about that. And I think just before we'd come down, Lal, I had decided that, yes, look, I was going to look into this more, and we had actually sent away some poo samples to see, you know, what was going on, and then we were looking at going to this nutritionist. In the meantime, this appointment came up, and I thought, well, look, I need to keep my options open. I need to see, you know, what they have to say. It's a different, it's, you know, the top hospital with the immunologists and all the rest of it. Let's go type of thing. So we did, and we did skin prick testing, and yes, you know, still allergic to egg, dairy, soy. And then what their suggestions was that Casey should be put into hospital down there, and that they would feed him and continue to feed him different types of food until they came across a food that he would be able to tolerate, and then we would go home.
Yeah. And
immediately alarm bells were ringing in me because I'd started to look into this chemical sensitivity. I knew what a toxic, I don't mean that in a bad way, I just mean in that there's lots of chemicals in a hospital, like the smells of those things would be inducing reflux in him. And I just thought, oh, this does not sound right to me. And I brought up to them, I spoke to them about how I had been looking into these biomedical interventions, you know, that they're sampling poo tests, and then they're looking at, you know, the difference in the microbiome in the gut. Not that I knew that that's what it was called back then. I can just imagine how I would have explained it, Lal. Do you remember?
Yeah, it's all the other bugs. You know, how your body, I think, we had a phone call. You know, Lal, you've got these bugs in your body, and they all work together, and sometimes you've got the wrong amount, and sometimes you don't have some. Yeah. And I don't know what they do, but they all work in the body. And I'm like, okay, so that's the approach that we're going. Okay. That was our team meeting, because our team meetings were every day.
So you can imagine from their point of view, you're stuck with it. You're landed with this mother from the bush
who doesn't speak science,
and who's ranting on about, you know, biomedical stuff, and, you know, which is not something that the mainstream community were looking at. I'm not even sure if they still are, because I'm out of that now. I don't know if it's still, you know, it was really poo-pooed type of a thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. And how old's Casey now? Casey's
7.
So that, you know, like, that was quite a time ago.
Yeah. So that's like 6 years ago, isn't it? So I don't know if that's still the case. But, you know, from their point of view, you can imagine what it was like. But so they were talking to me and telling me, you know, this is pretty well much what we want you to do. He needs to be put in hospital. This is what needs to happen. But there was just something inside of me telling me, no, this is not right. I think I need to go and look more into this other stuff, and I need to try and understand more what's going on. Now, that was my perception of what happened, and Leah reckons that I kind of turned my blinkers off.
Oh, look, you're sitting there with Jersey. It was like what she was saying sent alarm bells off in the hospital. And the more she spoke, the more doctors and the more support crew we got in that room. So it became a very crowded affair. And at some point, that's it. She shut down the the blinkers went on and she wasn't hearing any of anything, and she just sat there and nodded. And it was like she realised that she couldn't argue her way out of the situation because she didn't have the language.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of, okay, I need to take what they're going to give me here and step back and get out. So for Jers, it was a shut down, nod, and get out of the system so I can, gather the information and sort it all out. But, yeah, definitely the more you spoke, Jers, the more interest there was in trying to convince you that, no, there's nothing else out there that's going to help you other than the method of healing that we can offer you in here. So, it was really hard. And, of course, I was still on my journey, and I'm going, Jez, that sounds really good. You've got all these people that are going to support you. And she's sitting there. I'm like, I'm her best mate. And I'm saying, no, you're in the best hands, you're at the best hospital. You've got everyone at your beck and call. This is great. Let's do it. I'm ready to hand over the baby. It's not my baby, but I'm like, here, he's been screaming all day. He's all yours. Yeah. And Jez is like, no, Lau, we're going home. And she didn't talk to me in the car on the way home. It was like Casey in the back having a scream, and we're driving from Brisbane back to the Gold Coast, and she still had them blinkers on because I was on their team. So it took a little while for her to then process what was going on, what was being said, and then relay it to me. And then, of course, I had to come on board as well. And then she had to go home and convince her husband.
It's always the hard bit.
That this is what we were going to do, I say.
Yeah, you and I.
Yeah, it was just like, I can't explain it, but everything inside of me was like you said, I need to get out of here. This is not right. Something needs to happen. Something needs to change. We need to, cut, let's go.
Yeah, well, and intuition, it's this ability to acquire knowledge without reason and without, and when you look at a lot of medicines, different organs are associated with, different processing abilities or different innate responses to certain stimulus. And that's why, people say I'm drawn to something, or I can feel it in my gut, or no, that's not right. It's like as soon as they start listening to their brain and going through the processing and the thought process and trying to weed it out, it's kind of like the brain almost sabotages. So women especially and mothers, what's the saying is a mother knows best, like that innate primal urge or knowing that a mother knows. And Jez had that in spades. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, and I've always run by that. When I go and buy, it doesn't matter what I buy, hey, lounge, I go, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's a lounge, whatever it is, I go, yeah, no. My gut tells me to buy that one, so that's what I do.
But she does that with people as well. So it's like she had me and Mark and I, she had us pegged as soon as we walked in the door, and she decided we were all right. And I have introduced her to my friends, and I'm like, okay, Jess, can they be my friends? And she's like, nah. She is so good with listening to her gut instinct. So as soon as Jess turned around and said, look, this is just a gut thing, I'm just like, yep, hands off. Okay, this is the direction we're going with. And that's where we headed. It was,
that's something that I've taught you to do now, isn't it?
I know.
You are so much better at that than what you used to be.
I know. And when I actually say things like, you've got to listen to your gut, or, that start talking about innate and intuition and all those things, it's just like, Jez is in my head, she's in my ears, this is exactly what she said. So when she listens to a podcast, I'm sure she's sitting there thinking, hang on, I taught her that and she's spruiking my information. That's what it is. Jez is my guru when it comes to the innate.
So the moral of that story was Leah shouldn't have come with me that day.
No.
Mark should have come with me, because that night...
Everyone likes Mark better than Leah.
But I don't like him more than you.
Okay, that's all right. Okay, continue. I'm all right now. I've just picked myself up off the floor. I'm all right.
So that night, I remember sitting in your kitchen with just Mark and I don't know how we got Casey to sleep. Maybe you were out pushing him in the pram or something. I don't know.
Probably was.
Mark and I were sitting there, and I'm going, I just don't understand, what this is. I don't understand this whole, the biomedical intervention bit and whatever. So I told Mark in my, well, you got all these bugs and, blah, blah, blah business. And that's when Mark come up with his septic tank analogy. And it was like, the light bulbs went off in my head. He said, Jez, it's just like a septic tank. You've got to have good bugs and you've got to have bad bugs to make it work. If the bugs aren't in the right ratio, then it's not going to work septic tank's going to die type of thing, you know?
Yeah.
And then I went,
Yeah, because he was selling that to a farm girl.
yes, and that's right, yes, and that's why it made so much sense to me too, because obviously I knew how a septic tank worked. So yes, that was a huge thing, wasn't it? So then it was pretty well much coming home, then taking stock, having to convince my husband that didn't want to do what the hospital wanted us to do, that I wanted to try this other non-mainstream thing.
I think being in a room with Shane at that time was so much harder than being in that hospital room.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, it was hard. You know, can you, because after doing and going to the hospital, having these testings and making up your mind, you actually went and spoke to this nutritionist.
Yes.
And then she started to get you to put certain things in practice. So what was your day? What was the transition into getting the home set up for Casey and his part of his recovery?
So I thought I already had everything pretty well, you know, that I was doing pretty much everything. But when this nutritionist took us on, she didn't only take Casey on, she took on the whole family. And her way of looking at things was that if there's one person in the family with this problem, chances are other members in the family do, maybe not to this degree, but, you know, there's something going on with everyone. Yeah. And, of course, she was right. So she then sent to me a 20-page document with everything that needed to be done with and in the house. Wow. So, you know, if there was any chemicals whatsoever in the house, they had to go. All of any makeups, just anything that wasn't a natural, and I don't mean a natural as in made product either. I mean as in if it's not fruits and vegetables and fresh stuff, then pretty much it needs to go. Other than your baking kind of things.
But there was even no essential oils.
Wow.
Yes, no essential oils or anything because of the smell in them, and that then induced, you know, the reflux in Casey.
Wow.
You know, I remember, I think before then I'd changed to shampooing my hair in bicarb and vinegar because, of course, he was so close to me all the time. It was imperative that I didn't smell anything. So anyway, it was pretty well much ridding everything out of the house, didn't matter what it was, making sure everything was gluten, dairy, soy. Eggs were already gone. We got rid of those when we knew he was allergic.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was a huge thing. It was cleaning the house then too, making sure that the dust, all of that kind of stuff was done as well. So it was pretty well much a major clean out. We had carpet, didn't we?
Yeah.
So probably about 4 months in with her, she had convinced me that we need to get rid of the carpet in our house. That was the other thing Casey was allergic to, was dust mites really badly. And he had developed eczema quite badly to the point where it was itchy, scratchy, bleeding, and that he was in, Mum had made him those muslin suits.
Oh, I remember those. Yeah.
So he was in an all-in-one, but of course because it was so hot, she'd made them out of muslin for him so that we didn't have to wet bandage him. With the eczema.
And he was head to toe when you held Casey. Gabriel had spots of the similar sort of thing on his bum and these legs, but Casey from head to toe was rashes and lesions, but he felt like a cat's tongue. So you know when you rub a cat's tongue, he was rough and he had this his hair was like bristles on a scouring brush.
Oh, poor thing.
So, I know now that certain vitamins and minerals and deficiencies and that other stuff, obviously it comes out through your hair. But, you know, this hair just stood straight on end like he'd been electrocuted. And it was bright red and it was coarse. It was like you could have scrubbed a counter down. I'm not trying to be silly with the analogy, but that's what it was. It was, Casey, I love you, but it's really, to hold something like that and so loving towards someone that's he was abrasive. It wasn't his personality. He actually was abrasive.
Yeah.
just incredible.
Wow.
So at that stage then, I decided we needed to get rid of the carpet, any curtains, any cushions, anything fabric related where dust and dirt and dust mites in particular could then sit. So we ended up moving out of our house for a week and a half and went to the beach for a week. And somebody came in and we had the carpet removed and everything. And I remember we had to paint the steps because we couldn't find anything else to put on the steps at the time. Now, so.
Everything else had a smell, and even the paint that you chose had to go down first to give it that time to cure and air.
Yes, and so then we did it in summer when it was hot then too, so that the paint could off gas a lot quicker.
Okay, and this is a brand new house too. Like
yes,
the carpet was only 2 years old.
2 years old. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
So
we did all. We did that, and we have only looked back since then, as well, of course, too. So.
But you had dust mite covers on the mattresses, on the pillowcases.
Yeah.
Everything had to be, and even to this day, your dry dusting, how often? It's once a week. Wet dusting.
Yeah.
Wet dusting. Yeah. Wet dusting once a week, and the sheets get done twice as regularly as you would normally do them, and all that other stuff, just to make sure that there is definitely no dust in the house for Casey.
Yes.
And did you find that really made a big difference?
Yeah, it did. And interestingly enough, one of the first signs that something like that is going on is the bridge of his nose swells, and, his nose starts to become a little blocked. And, of course, we've been on school holidays and he went back to school yesterday. And so, of course, yesterday afternoon he came home with a fat nose and a bit of a blocked nose in the afternoon. So that's when you start looking at that fine line about, well, what do you do as far as, school goes as well.
Yeah. Well, on the topic of school, can we just hang in there with that and talk about what it's been like for you having a Casey baby? And we should tell everyone that Casey ended up with a diagnosis, and can you talk about possibly how you support him, so getting a diagnosis and what that's meant to you and to the school community as well?
Yeah, so Casey has a diagnosis of ASD, which just means autism spectrum disorder.
Yeah.
He has come along in leaps and bounds, I guess, since we got that. Actually getting his autism diagnosis was not difficult at all. We still see the same paediatrician that we've seen the whole time since he was a baby. And I think it might have been at his 3.5-year-old checkup that he just said, we would talk about whatever was going on. And, of course, by then his sister had actually been diagnosed with Asperger's, so of course I knew all the autism talk, I suppose, and I guess the doctor knew that he was, and I knew that he was, and he just said to me, well, look, we might as well just diagnose him now because we both know that he is.
Yeah.
But it's kind of something that we hadn't spoken about before then, so actually obtaining the diagnosis for him was not difficult at all, but it just meant then that I was able to access other services. Now, of course, in Bundaberg, we're restricted by what services we have, and there were even less back then. So all I could access was speech therapy and occupational therapy. There are now a few more services here, and we actually now have the AEIOU Foundation as well, which is an autism early intervention centre that kids can go to there as well. I would say that he is now more Asperger's than anything, wouldn't you, Leah?
Yeah, I would.
Yes, yeah. So I don't think he, would even qualify for that diagnosis anymore. As far as when he went to school and kindy, that was an awfully big leap. He has a management plan, doesn't he, Lal?
He does, which gets reviewed.
Yes, so we review it every 12 months, but it's pretty well much a three-page plan, and it just goes through everything that needs to be put in place and accommodated for him, I suppose. You know, just looking at things like, you know, he must only eat, obviously, food and water that's supplied from home.
Yeah.
I should have it in front of me so I can list it off, shouldn't I? You know, lots of things like that. You know, is there going to be any spraying in the school? Is there going to be any painting in the school? The school now does all of that over the school holidays. The first day of the school holidays, the pest control people come in, so that there's then 2 months for that to off gas and any of the residual for that to not be hanging around in the air type of thing for when he goes back to school. So there's all that little kind of stuff, but the plan's about, you know, 2 or 3 pages long, and it also goes into things like, you know, he needs to only use the Play-Doh that I supply. Yeah. When he was younger, we're just trialling this now, he used to wear little gloves to do some of the craft work and things so that he didn't then absorb it through his skin.
Wow.
Just having, you know, different felt pens that didn't smell, you know, I know for some kids, even the whiteboard markers that the teachers use were problems for them, but he seems to be able to cope with that kind of stuff now. But early on, that was certain, that all of those things were certainly in the management plan and were certainly something that really affected him. You know, I would know if something had happened at kindy that day or something, you know.
Yeah.
And then it was a matter of trying to work out what it was, whether someone was spraying next door, or they topped up the tan bark, or you know, they used a certain paint, all those things that you just take for granted. You just send your kids off to school and you assume that the environment's going to be safe for them. For someone like Casey and for a lot of other kids, you know, that are either diagnosed or not diagnosed, some kids walk around and they've got reflux and they've got all these other problems and these gut issues, and they will cause behavioural problems in kids. And, you know, the parents are just, well, you know, they're off their trolley, they're overtired, they've eaten something. And for Jers, it was a matter of, well, no, I've got to nail down exactly what's happened. So she was Miss Marple in working out. It was like one of those Inspector Clouseau things, you know, like she'd go after things and, all right, well, if it's not me and I've got my house in lockdown and we're all fine, then what was it? What was the exposure? Because that needed to be documented on the list of things. Yeah. And from the get-go, Jers had this little tiny, you know, spiraled journal, and everything went in there. She had like shorthand, because she's, you know, done shorthand before. She'd have shorthand for the time, what the poo was, what it looked like. She had catalogues of poo photos. And
I've got 2 of them in front of me now.
Yeah.
Wow. I found them today. But you know what? They've been the best thing ever now, because I can look back and go, oh, really? Like a lot of the stuff I just don't remember. But the other thing is, whilst all this is going on and all this is happening, I'm so aware that there are 20 other kids at school and that 20 other kids don't have any of these problems, and that they still need to experience and, you know, everything that kindy and school has to offer, and not be detrimented or, you know, just because my child's there too. And this poor teacher having to deal with me.
And then a new teacher every year, because it was a matter of educating the teacher on the process in order to make it, for Casey to be the student he needs to be and be able to learn. That needed to be tailored to him specifically. But I'm really surprised, all the things that we put in place, and even on my short little space in time that I spent in the school systems, the more information you bring to the teacher for the classroom, the more of it they sort of look at and go, hang on, everyone else in the classroom could actually benefit from this information. Yeah. I think that's why Jers has had such a success with the school. She hasn't walked in and said, right, this is my kid, you have to do this and has to be changed. Well, sometimes she did. But for the most of it, it's like, you know, nurturing them along the journey, educating them along the journey, and being part of, you know, like you're part of the PNC?
Yeah.
Jers, and you know, being involved as a community member and making those relationships and actually being committed. It's not just drop your kid off and run. No. It's actually being part of the community and having those relationships and those friendships with the parents and the other teachers and things like that gave you more of a chance to share and get everyone involved. So, you know, like your school in Bundaberg where you are, it's just amazing. It's like at the forefront, I would say, with, you know, their chemical loads and what they actually do for the other kids.
That's
It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is that I can't remember what I was going to say.
Oh, this happens a lot on our phone calls, Jess.
It hasn't happened for ages, but...
Well, tell us how you think this has changed you as a person going through all this.
Hugely, Jo. I was very opinionated.
Huh.
I was follow the rules. You just do what everyone tells you. If the expert tells you that's what you do, then that's what you do. Why are you questioning it?
Yes.
You know, they know what they're on about.
Yeah.
So probably from that point of view, huge changes, because I'm more open to listening to everybody's point of view now.
That's cool. Yeah.
And
it takes hard times for that to happen a lot of times, doesn't it?
yes, you know, I mean, everyone says that children change you, but it just didn't.
You didn't realise it would be that much.
No. So yeah, huge change in that regard, and just being, I guess, more aware of the different ideas that different people have, and that just because I thought that was normal for me doesn't mean it's normal for somewhere else or something, you know, and just trying to look at how different people have dealt with it.
And have you been able to help other people through your journey?
She's helped me.
I bet.
She kicked off my journey, and she was sitting there saying, "No, love, there's something wrong with your kid."
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, you're the one. You've got the kids that are screaming.
Yeah, mine aren't screaming.
Right. Yes. Yeah, no, so I suppose Leila and I have we've done it all together, haven't we? And
That's
now
good.
we're kind of at the stage where it's a reciprocal kind of arrangement. I am no longer now interested in all that sciencey stuff and wanting to know the intricate details of it. If I want to know it, I just ring Leila and say, hey, what does this mean and what's that bit? Because I can't delegate.
Yeah. And then I say, hey, Mark, Jess wants to know.
Yeah, that's right.
He's the one with the aptitude
brain.
for that sort of stuff. You know, like even when I speak about those things, I know what I'm talking about, but I'm not using their language. I'm talking in my language, and this connects to that. And it's, you know, with that doohickey that does this and does that.
And do you find with, I know with me, I'm more intuitive and experience, and, you know, that kind of thing is what I run on, whereas my husband is more the facts and the figures, and I think it's a girl-guy thing sometimes.
Well, I'm a lot like Leah. We need to do it to understand it as well.
Yeah. It has to be real, and it has to be happening now. So even the information that we read, it's, you know, 6 months later I go, now I've read something about that. It made no sense to me at the time, but I've read it and I put it on the shelf, and I can always come back to it. But I won't absorb it, and I won't put it into action, or I won't actually think, hey, look, this is what that actually is, until it needs to be actioned. Yes. And then I'm like, you know, scrambling, because I need that bit of information now. And I think having autistic children, you know, like they learn in you know, they go through these cycles, or there's different phases. And Jez and I the whole way have been trying to stay ahead of what the game is, and trying to predict where they're at and making sure we're informed, so we know that this stage is coming up next. And I think Jez has actually started, she's been studying psychology for a few years now, and I think that's why she went back to school. Do you reckon that that's why you went back and decided you were studying psychology, Jez?
Do you know, did I say that I wanted to go to uni? I think I decided that I wanted to do something, but I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. And it was actually the nutritionist that we were seeing at the time, and she said, you'd be really good at psychology, you'd really like it. And because she'd been right on everything else, I just went, okay, righto, well, that's what I'll do.
Oh, how funny.
But it's been a blessing. It's been really cool, because I ring up and I say, oh, look, he's doing this, and she'll rattle off that it's this theory and it's this thing and it's this part of their life, and I'm like, I don't even know what they are. I'm just like, oh, okay, fair enough. You read about it, it's in a book. It must be real.
Yes.
I'm not going crazy. So having Jez and her knowledge there has kind of been, you know, imperative to my growth and the direction in my family. Just having everyone on different pages and different levels, it's really hard to stay ahead of the game, because no one in our family or in Jezzy's family is normal.
No, that's right. Of course, apparently, except for you and I.
Oh, I don't even know that we're normal, Jers.
I don't even know what normal is anymore.
Don't. Someone might hear you. We've done so well to get through this far.
I know we have.
Done very well.
Jers, did you want to talk about shame? Because I really think that would help Jo in her growth and her development, and with Dave and with everyone else who, for all the other parents, whether they're men or women that make a choice and make a path, sometimes you don't travel the path together.
No.
Do you want to? Is that all right if we talk about that? Because
sure.
I've dragged my husband on and we've brainwashed him. Jers, it's because there's two of us working together.
Yes.
And I've had to get and write down what I need the argument is, and in sciencey type, math type, engineering type words, and stand there and read it to him so he understands what I'm saying.
Yeah.
In order to convince him to come on my path. And Mark's actually conceded and developed this whole masculine intuition, and now he's on board. But it's not always like that.
No.
Yes, it is. And that was a tricky thing for me, was that when Casey was born, I did not have the support from my husband, and I was pretty well much doing this all on my own. Whilst we all lived together in the one roof, under the one roof, he was not supporting me either by helping me look after Casey or emotionally, in any kind of way. So that was, I guess, the start of the breakdown of our relationship, which is really sad now when, I look back and see it. I guess one of the things that I suppose, and the catalyst for me, was I knew I had to do this for Casey and to continue to go down this path for him, and I had to make a decision. It was me and trying to put the kids first for what they needed, or was I going to try and keep our family together type of thing. And at the time I made the decision that I had to do what was right for the kids.
As mothers often do.
Yes, that's right. So,
it's that mother instinct.
Yes, that kind of happened. But we live in the same street, and the kids come and go up to see him and come back again. It's my suspicion that he is also on the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of, I guess, the breakdown of our relationship happened, because he had no way of understanding this instinct thing, I guess, that I had, because there, people on the autism spectrum are normally not intuitive in a lot of places. So that was that's been rather a difficult journey, hasn't it, love?
It has. We've had many conversations.
So he basically wanted you to stick with the mainstream way of doing things, or?
No, he actually came on board, and he actually would do everything while we were at home, but did not like it, and did not support trying to understand it and try and help me understand it, because I think he would have been really good at that, don't you? Well,
if it was his special interest, Shane is, he's a very likeable guy, and when he's passionate about something, when he gets an idea on something, that's it. The rest of the world can just pause, because I'm 100% focused on this, and this is what I'm interested in. And the whole way along, we were trying to get him to take this on as a special interest, because if he got it, if he realised, then he would have been, the saving grace of the world, because once he's passionate about everything, everyone's got to know, and he's got to share it, and everyone should be interested in what he's interested in. And that's the beauty of having Asperger's or ASD or any of those things, is their ability to hyper-focus and their conviction in what they believe. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Did we lose you again, Jers?
No, I'm back now.
Oh, good, you're back.
So did you want to explain to us what's happening with him now, with Casey, and how things are going now, and what's the direction that you take now?
So pretty much he's quite good in that he doesn't feed Casey anything. If Casey wants to eat anything, he needs to come back home to me. So I am primary carer for both of the children, and I do everything. They will go up there and have sleepovers, but that's after we've had tea and after we've had baths and everything. So he gets all the good bits pretty much.
The easy stuff.
Yeah. So, and I guess I'm just trying to work on repairing our relationship and me trying to understand the place where he comes from. So I guess for a long time it was so very frustrating for me because I just didn't understand why he wasn't helping me, why he didn't understand what I was going through, and why, I guess, I suppose.
Yeah.
Whereas now I guess I can step back and look at it and try to see from his perspective and try to understand what he understands about everything that went on, I guess.
And now you're through do you find you're through the harder years now with Casey? Like it's a bit easier now or not? Or just you're used to it or what?
Yeah, so look, now he's at school.
Yeah.
And he is probably, I guess you'd classify him as pretty well much paleo now, wouldn't you, Leah?
Yeah, but just to come from a baby that couldn't eat anything, not one single thing, and he's 7 and he's still on his journey and we're still healing his gut and his allergies still flare up and we've still got a few behavioural issues and a few learning things, but the difference it has made. And, you know, the other week when we were talking about with gaps, sometimes I think you told the kids that it'd take 2 years. Well, Jez is still on that journey. And Casey, I think the only thing that he can't have is the eggs. Is that right, Jez?
And dairy.
Eggs and dairy are the only things that he's not testing to as being a high allergy response.
Yeah.
But even then, he's on the cleanest paleo diet you've ever seen because he's not having... Really, he's having a few seeds, not a lot of nuts, and it's mostly the whole foods and whole veggies. And because he didn't grow up with those, you know how the child develops a palate and a sense of texture and all those other things. If you've got a kid that's on the spectrum that hasn't got those, you know, and hasn't been introduced to those things and those, you know, developmental things of introducing food along the way, then it's really hard to introduce those textures to them and those ideas that those are foods because for a long time they were the things that made him scream and cry and put him in pain.
He's probably scared of them.
Yeah, so for his view, but I was up there at Christmas and just seeing him sitting down to a plate of real food with everyone else.
Oh, that's so good.
Because even now, like Jez, you're not making does he still have custard? Or does he still...
He does have a little bit of Joe's coconut custard.
Oh, good. That's nice.
Joe's caramel coconut custard, but I've switched out the tapioca and we use gelatin in it.
Yeah, that's what we do now.
Yes.
It's good, isn't it?
So he has that once a day now, and he gets that at school, obviously.
That's good.
Now he's at school, but other than that, he's just eating whole foods.
That's really good.
For everyone, Jez, can you just explain, when we say custard and what he was having, can you explain the type of custard that Casey was having and how often he was having it? Like as part of his meal of, I suppose, where he, you know, when we started and what he's eating now in a day. Could you just talk about those two things?
Yeah, so he, once we transitioned off the NeoK, which was pretty well much straight away once we started our intervention, we were then using a lot of chickpea flour, and so everything was pretty well much made on chickpea flour, but because he'd been on a liquid diet until he was almost 2 years old, that's all he wanted, and he wanted to eat this custard 24 hours a day and didn't want to eat other things then. So it has been such a long, slow process.
Wow.
Slowly tweaking and adding things in, and then, like I just said to you, that I've switched out the tapioca in your coconut custard recipe. Yeah. That's like taking a tablespoon out at a time and adding a bit of gelatin in at the time, because
he can notice
consistency. Yeah. Okay. So there's all of those kind of things as well, and he's very rigid in what he wants to eat. Wants to eat the same thing every day.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of hiding veggies in in some things for him, because there's a little bit of an eating disorder there as well. So.
So what kind of tips have you got for mums with kids that do have eating disorders? Because I get questions from them all the time.
Well, the biggest one is just take really slow little steps. And we actually did his speech therapist actually does a little bit of I forget what she calls it, but it's like food therapy.
Okay.
And she just said to me, look, just come for one session, that's all you'll need, and you'll be able to do it yourself at home. Yeah. And it's pretty well much what you read in a lot of the books. You need to just get them to touch the food, and then that's all they do that day. The next day, get them to sniff it, and the next day put a little bit to their mouth, and then once you've got them that they'll lick it or something, then you can sit down in sessions with them, and you will do all those things in the one session. You're going to pick the food up and you're going to look at it and you're going to talk about it. And, isn't this, what does it look like? What else do you think it could be? And get them to sniff it, get them to lick it, get them to have a taste of it. And as they're doing this, you do all this as well.
Yeah.
So all the modelling.
Yes, all the modelling, things like that. But the biggest thing that I've had to do is just take such really slow steps that if in the end I want him to eat your custard and it has no tapioca in it, then it is, like I said, taking out the half a teaspoon of tapioca a day or every couple of days and putting in a little bit more gelatin to get it the consistency right, then that's what you have to do.
Yep.
And I think at the beginning of the school holidays, what was it, Lal, that I wanted? He was still having to eat some foods. He was still having this organic tomato sauce, which had sugar in it. So I wanted it to go. I wanted the tapioca to go. What else did I want at the start?
The corn, that was the last thing.
Yes, that's right. So he was having, the other thing that he was having like a cornflake type thing around his chicken nuggets.
Homemade, packed with veggies.
Which is the chicken nugget is chicken mince, beef mince, and chicken livers, and then whatever veggies you can get in there.
Yeah.
And then I was just coating them in like a cornflake type crunchy bit on the outside, so it had a bit of crunch, bacon in the oven type of thing. So it was for that to go.
Yeah.
And the tomato sauce to go. So I think we actually did that all before Christmas, didn't we?
Oh, that's good. So he's speeding up a bit.
Yeah, he is starting. And, well, I've just gotten tougher too now because I know he's that little bit older now.
Yeah, that's right. You can reason with him a bit more.
Yes, I can reason with a bit more, and I know he's not going to starve.
And there's a few white lies too, Hedges.
There are a couple.
Yeah, Mr. Woolworths doesn't have that anymore. We can't get it.
We can't get it anymore.
Can't get it because it won't go in the trolley.
Well, I don't take them. They hate going shopping, so
that's handy.
Well, it's such a sensory thing when you go to the supermarket or you go grocery shopping. Well, you've got the nail salons, the hairdressers, and then you've got the stinky $2 shops. And just to take a kid in there like that. Then
the worst thing for me is the washing detergent aisle. I can't stand it.
Oh, yeah, no, they
makes
can't.
my
If
head
they
ache.
ever come with me, they stand at the end of it because they can't stand the smell of it.
No, it's awful, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's really interesting. Can you think of anything else, Leah, that we should ask?
No, I can't think of anything at the moment, but I'm sure I'll think about it later on. But I think we should get Jez back to talk about autoimmune diseases and what she's done to help heal that.
Okay.
So I think we're going to do that. Can we do another one? And we'll do that on Jezzy's autoimmune disease because her approach has been very, very different and still aligns with, the gut healing and the therapies. And I think it's a bit different to what everyone else is doing as well.
Is this your autoimmune disease, Jersey? You mean?
Pardon?
Do you mean
Jersey's autoimmune disease?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Like what the symptoms were and when they started and all those other things. Because a lot of people don't understand that or don't realise they've got an autoimmune disease until it's really, really bad.
Yes.
And Jersey's story to that is actually quite amazing that she's got to this point and she's actually healing and undoing her autoimmune disease through gut therapy and food and the like. So the diet that she's got Casey on is a modified diet that she's also on.
Yes.
And she's doing it, so she's doing everything for Casey and she's doing everything for Caitlin, and they're on this autism spectrum.
Yeah.
Then she's also doing a similar thing for autoimmune disease. And just the fact that it's such a healing diet across a broad range of things, and it can, help assist, cure, reduce symptoms in so many different areas.
That's right. That'll be good. We'll look forward to hearing that.
Yeah, Jez has probably got school pickup.
Yes.
Yeah, so. Yeah.
We better get going.
It's okay. Kylie will come on my phone in a minute to tell me that it's time to go.
It's Kylie Minogue.
Oh, okay. It's your alarm. Thank you so much, Jersey.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. And we'll finish off there, and we'll get you back when we can, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful.
Okay. And thanks, everybody, for listening in to A Quirky Journey. We hope you've really found that helpful. And if you do have some questions for Jersey or for Leah or I, you can put them on our Facebook pages and just post your questions there, or on our websites. Also on the website, thewellnesscouch.com/A Quirky Journey. You can go there and leave comments. And we'd love for you to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, and also check out thewellnesscouch.com, where you can view a whole lot of wellness podcasts, all different kinds of things. And we'll hopefully you'll listen to us, next week. Whoops. And we'll keep working on all those changes, and we'll be back to share more of our journeys with you next week. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye. See you, Leah. See you, Jersey.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives.
Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavour to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.